Tuesday's program at 6 p.m. Natalie will be back with us for rain gardens. The following Saturday on the 20th, landscaping for birds. And then on Tuesday, June 23rd, we'll have Lisa Sons presenting backyard birds for us. For any information on any of these programs, to register, or for the link for program recordings, please contact Rachel at the library at her regular email, rblomquist@lasalle.lib.il.us. That's RBLOMQUIST at LaSalle, LASALLE.lib.il.us. Don't forget to use the chat, and I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and turn this over to Natalie. Natalie?
Hi guys, I am going to start my video, and you can stare at my face for a little bit, but I have a presentation that I'll switch to in a little bit. Like both Donna and Meg said, I'm Natalie Martin. I'm a volunteer with the Master Gardeners. And you're going to be, I think I referenced this in my last one, you're going to be tired of me by the end of June, but we've got some really cool presentations coming up. And I'm pretty excited about this one. I know that sometimes it's hard to know where to start when it comes to, you know, a big project or trying to switch things over in your yard. So I'm excited to talk about that. And a little plug, and I'll probably mention this at the end, next Tuesday's program about rain gardens is actually a really great way. We'll reference, I'm going to be referencing a wet, kind of soggy area in your yard, and rain gardens are going to be a great solution. So if you are intrigued and you want to know more, you can join us on Tuesday for that. I'm going to switch to my screen here, and I'm going to get started with our program. A lot of the content that that I used for today came from, and I can show you the website, but it's actually Fairfax County, Virginia, has an entire arsenal of information about wet yards and soggy yards and the step-by-step process on how you want to go about fixing those. So that's where some of my information came from today, and I can show you that website, but it's just fairfaxcounty.gov, and they have tons of really cool diagrams about how to improve drainage and things like that. And so a really quick helpful tip when you are looking for reputable sources online, where you can really find any sort of information, but where you can find information about gardening, is you want to look for, .org, .gov, those kinds of websites and those would be something that's funded, a lot of times research-based. You want to make sure that, a lot of times the DIY networks of the world and the HGTVs, they're super entertaining and super fun, but they're not always going to be, they're going to be more sometimes focused on aesthetics rather than actual beneficial tools and things like that. So keep that in mind when you are looking at sources online. A lot of times the extension website, the University of Illinois Extension, has a lot of the tools that you'll need, so you can start there and then go, and a lot of the other extension websites in neighboring states have similar resources as well. So let's get going. Whenever you are talking about making a garden transformation, you're going to have something in your yard that you are not pleased with, something that is bugging you that you would like to improve. Now, this is a picture of my own yard, which bummer for me. This, and obviously my big problem that I had in my yard, still can have on occasion, is lots of problems with standing water, specifically standing water that pools by my house. But your problem in your yard, or your thing that that you're just unhappy with, might be something different. Maybe you have an area that's extremely rocky, or an area that doesn't, maybe you don't get enough water in your backyard and you'd like to improve that. Maybe you have tons of weeds that are taking over. So we can go through a couple of those problems, just shallowly, or kind of at the surface. But I'm going to dig deep into this wetness problem and kind of show you the step-by-step process that we went through in order to kind of fix that. But A lot of times, yeah, you have something that's an issue. You have an area that is not being used how you want it to be used, and so you really want to take that area and transform it into something else. So yeah, this was obviously my yard was definitely not what we wanted it to be when it. I'm going to kind of, hopefully you can see my cursor here. I think I can switch to a pointer, but this area down here, this is the side of my house, and so when this water would run in, it actually was graded so that it would kind of run down and then pool right here by my house, which would then pool into my window wells. And you know, water, just like a lot of things, it's going to find the path of least resistance. And if it doesn't find a path, it'll make a path. And so it was making a nice watery path into my basement and flooding my basement. And this is a problem we had every season. Every spring we would get a lot of rain, and it would pool, and then it would drain into the basement. Now this was in process. We had already started the process of fixing this, and this was an excessive amount of rain. This was not our standard amount of rain. This was an excess amount, but we had already had our yard regraded once in this picture, and what our goal was to regrade it so that the water would run down this way and then up towards the front of the house. So we knew we wanted to be able to use this area in a different way. And then what is your goal? You want to figure out, okay, I don't like what's happening in my yard. I don't like that at all. I want it to be something else. This is a picture of the Ottawa Community Garden in Ottawa. And so you have a goal of how you want to use your yard. Maybe you want a nice sitting area. Maybe you want to add a vegetable patch. Maybe you want to add a pollinator garden. Those are all great goals, but it doesn't even have to be a big lofty goal. It can be, I want grass in this one spot. And so you really have to think about what you want your end result to be, and how you want to use that area. Sometimes, you know, we were like, oh, we're going to take our yard and we're going to make it this pollinator retreat, and every plant that's in my yard is going to be beneficial for something else for pollinators. Well, we want to know, we want it to be realistic. You want your goal to really be something that's achievable for you. So you want your goal to either be possible for what your skill level is, or if you are financially able to contract somebody to do work, you want to be able to make sure that you know that contractor is going to be able to help you and be able to do the work that needs to be done. So make sure that when you're thinking about what your goal is, that it's realistic. And maybe it's not realistic in one season. Maybe it's realistic over the period of 3 seasons. We had our yard graded, that was last year, when we had first had it regraded for the first time. And then it's go time. It's time to kind of jump right in. You want to get ready to do that work. You want to start it at the right time of year. If you're working on regrading your yard, for example, you probably don't want to start that right during the rainiest part of the year, because that's going to make it really hard to do your job. It's constantly going to be washing away the grading. The heavy rains will be washing away the grading. So when you're starting that work, make sure that you're starting it at a good time of year. We had that done in May, which was probably a little too late. We probably should have done it in April, or even a little bit earlier, so that it was able to have time to resod and things like that. Those are the trials and errors that you have. You probably don't want to start your vegetable garden in June because you won't be able to get a season out of it. Or, you plan that into your plan. I'm going to start, constructing everything in June. I'm going to work all season, and then it'll be ready for fall plantings, or, to overwinter for the next season. A lot of problems that we discussed, wetness, heavy amounts of shade, heavy amounts of weeds, those things require a lot of labor, and that's a lot of work. So make sure that it's something you're physically capable of breaking into pieces and doing, when you're planning that into your plan. None of those things that we talked about are quick fixes. So, think about that. Think about what your timeline is, and really how you can, you don't want to start a project and not be able to use your yard for 2 to 3 years. So make sure that you're maybe planning in some transition stages, so that during this, long process, you have the ability to still use your yard. And then figure out if you need some help. Like we talked about with the grading, we had to contact somebody to do the majority of that project. If you wanted to add, pour a new patio or things like that, you'll need to make sure that you can get that professional assistance during the time that you need it and work along their timeline so that you can, get it in at a good time. And that might mean calling this fall for a job that's going to happen next spring. And like we're talking about, make a plan. Can your whole project be done at once? Maybe it can. Maybe removing certain types of weeds, maybe your yard is full of garlic mustard and you want to eradicate that from your yard. That can probably be done all at one time. Other projects, if you wanted to till up part of your yard for a vegetable garden and happen, that probably can be done in 1 to 2 weekends. So think about really, how long that project's going to take or how many, different segments it will have. How much will it cost? There are some ways that projects can be done cheaper, but a lot of times that might mean that they take longer. Make sure that your budget is good because you want to make sure that you don't run out of money and your job isn't finished. So make sure that you're thinking about every, part of your project and how much it's going to cost and whether you want to make the labor sacrifice and do some of the work yourself, or if you want to save up and have a contractor come in and do it for you because it might be done faster. Should it be done in phases? So the wet area that we had, we started it in May of last year of 2019, and we got the majority of it done last year. And then we added a second part of it this spring once we realized, okay, we have this other rainy season. We wanted to see how things were this rainy season and then what else we could do before we move forward with that. So there's probably going to be 3 or more phases in our project because you kind of have to see rainy season to rainy season how the changes work and what, and whether, you need to do more. Are there any permits or permissions? You need to check with if you are doing something, we just put in a fence this year because we have a new dog who likes to run away. Yay, me. Make sure that, your city or village, if you need to get a permit to put in a fence, put in a patio, sometimes even, adding on a deck to even an existing slab, you still have to get a permit for that, adding on a garden shed or something like that. But some smaller projects, just digging a vegetable garden in your yard, that shouldn't need a permit. So make sure, but you can always call and double check this, villages are used to those kinds of questions. So it doesn't hurt at all to either check the website of your village or, go to talk to them in person or call them on the phone. Can you do it all yourself? This kind of, it's coming back to that of, are you capable of doing the work that needs to be done? And sometimes we all think, oh yeah, that's no problem. I can definitely trench that drainage pipe and do it. But do you feel confident that you will do it correctly and that it won't cause further problems if you don't do it correctly? Some things, it's a very low risk doing it yourself. You might be able to do it. And hey, if you do it wrong and it, ends up not working, it still won't matter because it's not going to adversely affect anything else. If we trenched our own drainage pipe incorrectly here in our, I'll show you our project that we're working on. If we trenched it incorrectly, that could cause backups to our gutter system. It can cause water pooling underground that could affect our foundation. So really think about your project and if it's something that, if you do it incorrectly, if it's going to cause you more problems. Some things, like we said, putting in a vegetable patch, that's, that really would only affect you, and that can be a lot of trial and error, and that's okay. So really, think about whether or not, and then contact your contractors. It's always great to get a second opinion, to get a second bid, and it doesn't usually cost you anything. And it doesn't usually hurt. If you have a favorite contractor, perfect. Use them, make sure you fit in their timeline and that they are capable of doing the job that you need to do. But, if you aren't, we had put a fence in and, we called a couple different places to see who could give us the best price, the best materials, and make sure that our project was going to be exactly what we wanted it to be. Calling Julie. This is something I think a lot of us take for granted when we're working on projects, but if you're working in gardens, there's a lot of digging. And if you're putting in, maybe you want to add shade to your backyard and you're going to put in some trees, well, that's a big hole you need to dig. And even sometimes large shrubs, things like that, those holes can get pretty sizable. So you want to make sure you are confident where your power lines are, because that's a big owie. That is a big thing that could, hurt. Can you tell I have small kids? Big owie, yikes. Those are some things that could really cause big problems, knowing where your water lines are. So calling Julie before you dig, they're usually very prompt. They can come out sometimes within the same day, but it's usually within a week. So if you know that you're going to be starting your project, make sure to call and dig. And if you're not familiar with who Julie is, if you've never done a project like this, it's a company that you call one number for free. They're going to come out and mark where all your power lines, cable lines, water lines, things like that are. And if the utility company doesn't come and mark them, then your city will come and mark them. So make sure that you're calling so that you don't cause yourself an expensive problem, because if you cut your cable line, you have to pay to fix it, unfortunately. So make sure that you do that to not cause yourself any more problems. And then follow the plan and adjust if things change. Like I said, our plan was we were going to call a contractor and they were going to regrade our yard and then everything was going to be perfect. But that's not really what happened for us. We had to kind of adjust our plan and adjust what we wanted to do as things changed. We didn't originally have a fence in our plan, but we got a new dog and hey, we needed a fence in our plan. So that changed how we wanted to do our grading project as well. And I can show you some pictures. So here's another picture as an example. We'll talk about my project of an extremely wet yard. Now this was from May of last year, and you see we already have our downspouts. The first step that we did was put our downspouts as far out as we could because we wanted to keep the water away from our foundations. Here on this picture, there's two window wells, right here and right here, and this window well would fill so high with water because the water would pool from the downspout. It would fill so high with water that it would completely fill with water and then seep through the edges into our basement and cause all sorts of fun problems for us. So this was after we had it graded the first time. And what was happening was, yes, the water stayed away from the window wells now, but it's still pooled in the yard. And what we needed it to do was come down here. The street is down here on this side, back here. We needed it to come down to stay away from the house and go out to the street. So that was kind of where we needed to go. And like I said, there were some improvements that were made with the first time we graded it. It stayed away from the windows here. But we've had to add more dirt here along the edges and along the window wells to keep this level higher and add even more of an extreme grade to the outside. But if you find that you have an extremely wet yard, you first have to figure out where the water is coming from. Now, sometimes you'll say, well, it's coming from rain, Natalie. Of course, it's pooling from the rain. But sometimes it's something that's even worse. Maybe there's a problem with, maybe there's a pipe that is leaking somewhere underneath, and maybe there's a septic issue if you do have a septic field. So you need to make sure that if your yard is constantly wet, even when it's not raining, that's a sign that there could be water coming from a different place, a different area that doesn't have anything to do with nature. But maybe it is just that wet. Maybe you have a swampy yard. Maybe you need to, maybe it's especially wet during the rain. Usually it means it's natural elements. So then you have to go, is this solvable? If you have, if you are near a river or a wetlands area, you might always have a wet, soggy yard. But I would say that 99% of the time, this would be a solvable problem. There's lots of different things that could be done to a wet yard to fix it. And then, do you need professional help? That's a tricky question during these quarantine times. I think we all need a little bit of professional help. But with professional help in these areas, if your yard is one that I referenced where you constantly constantly have water bubbling up or sitting in your yard or in certain spots of your yard, and it's not raining and it's a dry season, then that's probably when you need to have, an excavator come out, or, someone come out and take a look to see if there's some sort of physical problem, wetness coming from somewhere. And then what can you do with this area? Do you have enough space to add a rain garden, like I referenced earlier? Do you have enough space to change the plantings so that to something that helps with drainage? Do you have the ability on your lot to trench down your drain pipes, things like that? Can you add a pond? That's one of the things we actually talked about, was channeling some of our water and making a little, pond area in our yard so that we can enjoy something like a little benefit from the water. So kind of think about all those big things when you're thinking about, extreme wetness in your yard. This picture is from today. Let's solve it. This is, like I said, step 2. Showed you we have this fence that we had to put in now, which kind of changed how we had to grade things. And we have this really attractive black hose coming off of our drain. What we found was, even with this pipe, this drain pipe stretched all the way here, it still was sitting in this wet area. So we had to take our drain pipe and extend it and bring it all the way. It's almost to the road now. So removing the source, ours was 100% rainwater based. All of our drainage was happening, or all of our drainage problems were, coming from excessive water that, with improper grading, was pooling in this area of our house. So we had to remove the source. We had to change how this downspout worked and bring it out to the road. Adding drainage. We added some plantings along this might just look like really tall grass, but I promise it's something a little nicer than that. And it's still in process. You can see my clumps of dirt, but we added some plantings this spring of some native flowers and some gladiolus and things like that. And those kinds of plants are going to help drainage in this area. When you have a constant packed down foundation of clay right along your house, there's not a lot of pore space, not a lot of space in between your soil particles. There's not a lot of space for that water to go away. So it's gonna run out of your drain spout, and it's not gonna have anywhere to go because you've got this densely packed clay. So having plant roots and things like that right in it, right in that soil, is going to help your water drain away from your foundation. So we added some plantings right there along the base, and we'll probably extend this out just a little bit too as the seasons progress. But plants are expensive, so we wanted to do it a little bit at a time. And then change the grading. When in that previous picture, we talked about how even after we had it graded the first time, it still wasn't really what we needed it to do. And what my husband ended up having to do, and it's hard to see now because we have grass there, but he has to dig almost a shallow channel from this area, because we did get water. One of the previous pictures was water in our backyard. So we would get water all the way back there and then all the side here. And so he had to dig a channel from our backyard to the front, and that's kind of where this drain pipe is laying right now. So those were some, I would say moderately, there was some moderate financial cost when you hire a professional to grade something. There's going to be a financial cost there. And then, there's drain pipe involved and plants involved. So there's a moderate financial cost. But if you wanted to make even more dramatic of a change, you could do something like add a pond and have your water drain out to a pond, or a rain garden. And a rain garden is an area that's set about 10 feet away from your foundation, maybe even farther, but you have your downspout or your water channeled so that it runs to this area, and it has gravel and soil amendments done so that it's got better drainage, and then lots of native plantings, potentially a small pond area, things like that. But it's an area that's specifically meant to take your water runoff from your yard and run it through native plants that are meant to remove toxins. So it's kind of controlling the chemicals and things from rainwater runoff. Our roofs a lot of times are made of asphalt. And, you know, they have chemicals in them. There's a lot of tar, there's a lot of things like that, things that run off from our driveways and everything. Any pesticides we use in our yard, those things will run off in when it rains and go out into the water system. So a rain garden will help remove those. And we'll talk more about that next week. You know, obviously we're a work in progress here in our yard. We're at, I think I said like phase 2. Our next phase is going to be to dig a trench and lay some gravel in it, and then lay this drain pipe, sorry, that word escaped me for a second, this drain pipe down into that trench and run it out to the street. And then we're going to lay a walkway over the top so that we can access that drain pipe pretty easily if we need to. You know, there's some other things, you know, you could do with that drain pipe. Some people run them all the way to the road. But, you know, you don't, what you should not be doing is running them down into your basement and into your sump pump, because that is against building codes, and cities do not like you to do that, because your water, you know, it'll just add this big influx of water during rainy times, and the water systems are just not equipped to handle it. So do not run your drains into your sump pump, but you can run them out onto the road so they go into storm sewers. Some other examples that we can talk about, you know, I can answer any more questions about our project, but we can talk about some local larger projects that the Master Gardeners have done to transform some local areas. And one example is a butterfly garden. And Meg might be able to give an exact location of this, you know, after the program is over, but this is located in downtown Ottawa. And this was just, you know, a median kind of a easement between a parking lot and the road that the Master Gardeners worked together to remove any large shrubs from it. You can see they laid out where they wanted the new things. They laid them out with marking paint and rocks so that you can really see what their plan was. They worked together to kind of pick the shrubs and the specific plantings that they wanted. I can read a little bit about, I'm going to read their words because it was Master Gardeners that did the whole project. But the reason they wanted to start the garden was for pollinators and to show how native plants can be a beautiful addition to the home garden. The hope was people could use it for educational purposes also. They first had a large group that removed shrubs and gravel, and a smaller group that had some initial plants. They planted some non-natives initially to fill it in, and later began removing them as the native plants filled in. So just to kind of sum that up, they wanted the majority or all of the plants in the future to be native plantings, but they wanted something in there right away that would look really good right off the bat to fill things in. So they added some non-native, well-growing, you know, plants, and then went through and removed them. So that's showing the phases that they had. So it says they took about 3 years for the native plants to get a really good size. There's about 3 to 4 volunteers that work, you know, yearly on it to maintain it and make sure that it's, you know, still, you know, fulfilling the goals, which was having a native planting that, you know, was attractive to pollinators. So we'll go back to the start on that. So they had this plan. And they had their goal, which was to have a native pollinator garden in Ottawa that could be accessed and used for educational purposes. That's the goal. Then they went through and made their plan. They said, okay, we're going to put non-native shrubs and plants in initially and plant in some natives as we get them. And as those natives fill in, we will remove the non-native plants. So great, that's showing a great plan. And then they kind of initiated it. You can see over here, we've got our shrubs that had gone in. They've got their markings out, their area marked, and they planted grass in around the area. And then you can see 2 great examples of things starting to fill in. And as they went and were able to get things, they've got this lovely bench so people could enjoy it, a little bird bath. Looks like we've got some lamb's ear up front. I can't identify all of them, but there might be some yarrow in there. And things look really nice as they're coming in. And then it looks like as things established, they removed those big shrubs that we saw earlier. We've got some purple coneflower over here. So things really, as they filled in, they kind of maintained them so that they could fulfill their goals of, having it be all natives. And this actually was certified as a pollinator garden, which is amazing. So that means that the authorities that govern, what is considered official pollinator gardens, said, yeah, this garden meets all of our criteria and we are certifying that this is a pollinator planting area. So really cool project that the Master Gardeners put on over in Ottawa. And another example of one that was a big transformation. This is the Extension Office garden, which is north of Route 80. It's kind of in that over by the hotels and the strip malls up there. But this is a pretty classic example of just regular office landscaping, right? You have some plants that went in years ago, and then they kind of get forgotten or maintained off and on, and then you have some sparse plantings. Well, the Master Gardener volunteers, they wanted to show how pollinator plants and native plants can be beautiful for the home garden. Again, that was, that's always our goal, is to show how people can utilize gardening in their own lives. That's definitely one of our goals as a Master Gardeners. But the hope was people could use it for educational purposes also. So that, and that was, very similar. And they, so these are a couple before pictures. There's looks like a yucca in there, maybe yucca over here. And then I think I saw some other pollinator plants. So this is a before on the left and of a similar view. And then this is a after, and you can see how these pollinator plants really filled in. There's a nice, they're really dense, densely packed, which these plants are great with. They love, they're prairie species and woodland species, so they're used to being packed together. But there are tons of great Illinois native species that are represented here. So you can really see, we went from, on the my left-hand side of my screen, we went from, sparse and kind of sometimes sad looking. I'm not hating on anyone's landscaping, but you can always tell when plants are happy. And then these ones over here on the right-hand side are just really beautiful, diverse, and showy. So some really great examples of how some transformations can happen. And these were really, with labor and plants. There weren't, with the, I'm going to go back to the butterfly garden. This one, there are some hardscaping elements, and there was quite a few plants that were purchased, but a lot of this stuff was just done with labor and plant selection. So, this isn't a big giant transformation like my wet, soggy yard. These were, it's a giant transformation, but it's not a big hardscaping, invasive transformation, I guess is what I should say. But still lots of really great impact that was made with plants and labor and hard work. But yeah, that's pretty much, I'll leave you with I'll leave you with our pollinator gardens there to look at while we answer some questions. But that's pretty much, I guess, to sum up what we talked about, is number one thing that you should always do when you're thinking about making a transformation is to make a plan and think about what your goal is. You don't want to go in with only a kind of half-created plan, because it's going to be really hard once, if you hit some roadblocks, where to go from there. You want to know what your goal is so that you can always, reflect back on that goal when you are, working through the plan or coming up against roadblocks, or maybe contacting somebody. If you contact a contractor to help you, they're going to need to know what that goal is so they can make sure that they're helping you the best way they can. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm definitely interested in hearing some questions if you guys have some. I think Donna's going to be moderating those for me. So thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thanks, Natalie. I see that Meg was kind enough to give us information about the Ottawa Butterfly Garden.
Thank you, because I forgot to write it down.
She said that's fine. She said it is located at the corner of Madison and Canal Streets. It was certified as a Monarch Way station as well. And there are flyers provided in the mailbox at the garden to learn more about the project, the plants, and the butterfly life cycle and needs. So that's definitely one place you want to stop. As a little
Absolutely.
outing.
And I'll do a quick note on you know, Monarch way stations, things like that. This is something that you can do in your own yard. It doesn't have to be a city spot or a public park. Your yard can become a certified habitat for pollinators. So that's something really cool that you can do, because those corridors are very important for birds and for butterflies, that especially creatures that are that migrate like those.
Okay, we have a question. You mentioned septic fields. I have an aerobic septic system near a low area in my yard. Do you have suggestions for water-loving plants that won't cause major root issues with the septic?
So root issues with a septic, yeah, you're always going to want to be very careful because when you have your septic field area, and I'm not, unfortunately, not going to be able to come up with anything right off the top of my hat, but I can, if you get your information to Donna, I can do a little research for you and get back to you. But with with any sort of septic system, you want to make sure that whatever you're planting is not going to be too invasive. You know, number one problem that I've had with a septic system in the past is root structures, you know, invading the pipes and causing lots of issues. But, you know, you definitely don't want it to be with an invasive root system, and you definitely don't want to plant any food species over there, or species that, you know, you would be consuming for yourself, because there are going to be, you know, there is going to be a leach field involved, you know, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're not using it for those. Otherwise, you know, when you're looking at wetland species, if I prefer, you know, things like natives, because they're going to be the most adaptable to your area, your climate. They're going to require the least amount of work. And so some, you know, if you think about some of our native planting areas, prairie species would be, you know, great for those areas. They're used to lots of influxes of water, things like that. Any sort of thing that's adapted for a wetland area in the state of Illinois would be perfect. But I can make some suggestions and follow up with you, because unfortunately I am not an encyclopedia of plants off the top of my head.
Okay. Whoops. There we go. Okay, thanks, Natalie. And we will follow up on that. I have another question. In a rain garden, do you amend the soil with gravel, or do you apply it to the top over the dirt? Should the soil be amended with sand, and what would it include, plus % of amenities added?
So I'm gonna ask that you come on Tuesday to our program, because I'm going to be going in depth about those. But basically, when you use a rain garden, you're going to have to dig out an area and then relayer it in. So when you say % added or something like that, it's all going to depend on the size that you want it to be, you know, you know, everything like that. But so please come on Tuesday. We'll be talking a lot about rain gardens. I have lots of really good visuals to show you. So please attend on Tuesday, and we can get that information to you if you aren't able to join us on Tuesday at 6. But you will want to dig up your dirt and then layer back in, so that you have kind of, you know, if you think about kind of like a landfill, which is a terrible thing to think about, but you have layers and systems in place to keep that garbage inside. But this is going to be something, you have layers and systems in place to drain that water away from wherever it is. So you definitely want to remove it and replace it rather than just adding it on top. And that's going to be, you know, so we'll talk more about that on Tuesday, and we can get you more in depth. But as far as % added, you know, it's really going to depend on what size you're gonna do.
Okay, great. And we are looking forward to Tuesday. Here's another question. I also have an area by my foundation that is almost always in shade. What can I plant there to provide coverage vertically so the cement foundation can be covered or visually improved?
So I'm hoping that you wouldn't need anything more than, 6 inches, maybe 12, but I love ferns and I love hostas, and there's so many different varieties of those and you can even find some Illinois native ferns that grow really well. But shade plants, I would direct you to Illinois woodland shaded plants, things like trilliums, things like Illinois bluebells, or Virginia bluebells. Those ones would provide that height that you want. Ferns would be great. We have tons of Illinois ferns that would work well, but any fern, if you're not completely, tethered to native plants. I have some cinnamon ferns that are growing on the side of my yard in our shady area. And they will grow, if they're really happy and healthy, they're going to grow, 6 inches to 18 inches, depending on how hardy they are. I have a hosta that's growing on my side yard right now that is 18 inches tall. But they can be there's tons of varieties of those. But Illinois woodland plants, and those are going to be different than Illinois prairie plants. But Illinois woodland plants are perfect for wet, shady areas. And they can vary in height, but bluebells are great, and they will grow well in a shady area and provide beautiful flowers, as well as that vertical coverage that you're looking for.
That's great. I do have a question to follow up on that. Where would you find Illinois woodland plants? Is that on the Extension website?
If you're looking for just a list, I'm sure that I can do a quick Google and just see what our resources are on the Extension website. I love Wild Ones, which is it's nationwide, but there's different chapters. Our Wild Ones chapter is based out of Bloomington. Wild Ones does both a plant sale, so you can purchase these plants, all Illinois native plants, but they also do educational programming. They do, like they said, the plant sales, and they've been doing a lot of webinars and things like that, but they have some website databases that you can get to as well. And they would be a great, they're a great resource for native plants.
Okay, so Wild Ones out of Bloomington, we ought to be able to find that on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's asked that we repeat the location of the butterfly garden in Ottawa. That would be at Madison and Canal Streets. So that would be the place to go there. We'll also have that information. We'll post it on our website.
And just a quick thing, I did do a quick Google. The Illinois Extension website does have a wildflower database. They have a whole database of native plants, wildflower habitats, how to obtain plants and seeds, and then a visual directory. So it has pictures of what they are. Now, it doesn't look like, you can do an advanced search, and you can pick things by hardiness zone, season, soil conditions, and exposure to light. And so that's going to be really great. And I can send you, I'll put in the chat, I'll put the website to that.
Okay, that would be great, Natalie. And we will also post that on the website just to make sure that we have that covered.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had one in Wild Ones out of Bloomington. Did you have another address?
Sorry if you're hearing clicking sounds. I'm getting that website posted for everybody. And I can get the Wild Ones website for everybody as well.
Okay, I think that's everything we have so far. Does anybody else have another question for Natalie for today?
Well, thanks everybody for joining me today. It's been awesome. I guess my video is on. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon for one of our other programs.
Thanks, Natalie. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, see you Tuesday. Have a good rest of your Saturday, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Natalie.
Thanks. Bye.